Mitch, you haven't been doing this before?
That's right.
Since you are here?
That's the first time for me to have a master feedback with you.
Alexa, how is Mitch doing?
I don't know that.
Okay, you still have to work on it. I'm gonna give Mitch a bit of an introduction what this show is about. You know, Master Feedback is a product we're doing. It's a STEM mastering service where in the first step we give people some feedback on their mix and some recommendations. Then they send us their stems and we do a STEM mastering here. We've been doing this for a while now. It's really popular amongst our customers and we get great results. And what we're doing here is pretty much give people a bit of an idea how we're working when we're listening to the track for the first time. So let me read an email that I've gotten. Hi Mark, I'm Carlos from Caracas, Venezuela. I own your book and I'm happy with that. I'm trying to apply all, but it's not easy, lol. Well, I'm sending you a mix of a song that I do called Democracy. It's a ska song from a reggae artist from here. The artist name is Mulatto. Well, I'm scared because I'm starting in mixing and I know that I'll need to practice and learn a lot, but here it is. Thanks a lot for your time and sorry for my English. Carlos, I think your English is great.
Yes.
And his name is Carlos Edunahi from Venezuela, which is fantastic. We never had a track before from Venezuela.
Okay.
And I can't wait to hear it. And here, once we edited this video and put it on the edited version on Facebook and YouTube and so on, people will also see the screencast, what's happening on the screen, because we have a couple plugins set up here. Here's the Klanghelm VUMT that allows us to go into mono mode, listen to what's in the middle, go into stereo only. That plays only what's happening left and right without the mono part. It's very useful. Then we got the levels plugin here, which gives us something like headroom, stereo field, and so on. And of course, we do have the linear phase EQ within Logic. It's a very useful tool because it has an analyzer on board. So, you know, you can see what's happening. I mean, you always listen first and then you can have a little look on the EQ and, you know, sometimes it helps to confirm what you're hearing. And then you can go in EQ mode. Let's say I miss a certain frequency or I think something is a bit too much. I can go in right here and fix it. And the analyzer is always a great confirmation that I'm onto the right thing. So, without further ado, let's have a listen to this track. Let's go.
My people is scraping the bottom of the barrel, doing the line to get their food today. It doesn't matter the way of the apparel. The revolution took our destiny away. My people is a victim with pain and domination. Under the violence that kills like the doomsday. What can be done to stop this growing situation? Oh, please, my Lord, give us just a way to democracy, because we need to see the light. To democracy, we want to live this endless night.
Okay. So far, we listened up to the chorus. Yeah, I mean, I really like the vibe of the song.
Yeah, it's a cool ska reggae song. And
Really cool vibe.
yeah.
What's great, it doesn't look squashed on the limiter, you know, it has great dynamics. So as far as mastering, there's still a lot we can do with it. It still has all the dynamics. It has a really fine resolution. You can hear the attacks of the hi-hat, piano. I mean, it's all in really high resolution. I had a feeling, I mean, the bass was very clear and full. I think the bass sounded great, but in general, I heard the bass, the kick, and then I heard a lot of sizzling in the highs, hi-hats, and you know, all these little elements that make up the rhythm. What I'm missing a little bit is the warmth of the track. You know, when I think of a reggae track, it's always, you know, I think of a hot club, you know, steamy, sweaty, and the sound is really filling the dance hall, you know, and it's really warm. I hear the bass and the kick that fills the low end, and it's pretty transparent. But above kick and bass, I'm really missing some, I would say 200, 300, 400 hertz, which I'm calling it warmth in my book. It's a frequency range that sometimes gets forgotten. It's 200, 300, 500, even up to 700, you know. You get a lot of advice, mixing advice, where people say, oh, take the 300 or the 200 out of the kick. You don't need it. Well, that might be working for some genres, but I think in general, people are not paying enough attention to this range. 2, 3, 5, 700, I would call it the low mids. This is, I mean, you have to make sure not to feature one of these frequencies too much, but I have a feeling here that somewhere in that range, and we can play around with it a little bit, it's missing something.
I think when you boost too much in this range, then it sounds boomy or something like this. When I'm mixing live situations, then 200 or 300 hertz are a frequency range where it's very booming, and but in the mix it could
be different in a live situation, you know, because especially when you're doing sound check and there's no audience there, then of course that's always the thing. If you have an untreated room, and a live situation is often very much like an untreated room, you know, that 200, 300, 500 hertz is bouncing back and forth from the walls and the ceiling, and then even worse, in some situations you get some feedback and it's you get all this mess, you know, which, I mean, in really professional setups, you know, this is not really happening anymore, because the level of live sound we now get is a lot better than even 10 years ago, you know, even more, 20, 30 years ago. So I'm not sure if that can be compared, but it's always the same, you know. You have to make sure across the entire frequency spectrum that there's something happening everywhere, that there's no resonance. So it's a space that people forget. You know, it's the classic thing, everybody cares about their low end. I rarely ever get a mix where the 50 hertz are not featured, you know, because everybody sits in their home studio or wherever, or in the car. Everybody wants to make sure, you know, those woofers are really pumping and it's moving and the room is shaking. And that's easy. You put in some 50 hertz and the room is shaking. It's not always the right solution, because a funny thing is that if you have a low mid-range that's very healthy and balanced, that will also help bring out the 50 and 100 hertz, because, you know, it goes back to music theory, where there's a 50, there's a 100, there's a 200, there's a 400. It stacks in octaves. And you have to always think of a mix in musical terms. I mean, that was one observation. The other observation, I think, in reggae music, there's a lot of creative things you can do with stereo panning. Obviously, kick and bass, as always, would probably sit in the middle, as well as the lead vocal. But then, you know, you have some things like the hi-hat and the piano and the reggae guitar. And you can be very creative with putting these stuff, you know, left and right. And you have to find a balance. Maybe if guitar is left, you have to put the piano right and do a little bit of a balance, you know, maybe with a hi-hat and a tambourine, but you can do more to it. I mean, what I like very much is a very short delay. Logic, for example, has a thing called sample delay, where you can set a delay time not even in milliseconds, but in samples. It's very short. If we have a sample rate of 44,100 and the sample rate in the sample delay says 100, that's 100 out of 4,400 within a second. So it's 1 second divided by 44,100 and then that 100 times. So it's very small values, but it can be really helpful if you can't decide whether you want to put a hi-hat left or right or a rhythm guitar, a reggae rhythm guitar. You don't want it in the middle, you don't want it right, because then the mix leans right. Then often you can do a little, and many people use a chorus or some symphonic stereo effect or something, but a little sample delay can be really nice, where you simply delay one side of it a tiny little bit and it completely opens up. So you can play with all these elements that are going on left and right. You can do left, you can do right, you can balance the both, but you always can do the sample delay as well, which puts one part of the signal far left and the other far right. That's something to play with it. And then you can put a stereo imager behind it and bring it a little bit further to the middle. So these are things, you know, if I was mixing this type of music, I would play with this a little bit. Let's have a listen. That's why I said it's really useful to have the Klanghelm VUT, which gives us some interesting modes. And let me play you, and you will all hear this hopefully on your speakers. Play the stereo signal only.
Oh, wow.
We hear a little bit of the kick. You hear the reverb of the vocals. Can you check on your iPad if we get that signal through to the live stream? Because I'm not entirely sure of the routing that we have here. Great. So you guys can hear what we heard here, and then of course we can listen to the center only. This is the opposite. We just heard stereo only, and now it's the middle only.
Because we need to see the light.
And you know what? If you listen to the stereo signal only, what we can hear, there's not much happening. There's a little bit of reverb, and there's really not much going on. And this is what I said, you know, with reggae music, that's a style of music where you can really balance the center and the stereo signal. And you should find great contrast in the mix between middle and what's happening in the stereo. So in theory, there should be going on a little more on the stereo side of things. So let's listen to the whole thing again, and I want to play a little bit with the EQ now that we know it's in the monitor.
We want to live this endless night. To democracy, because it's time to see.
So it's funny, I'm at around 300 hertz. Let's go directly to 300. And let me just boost the hell out of it.
The light. To democracy, we want to live this endless night. To democracy,
We can do quite a lot. I got 5 dB there going on now.
because it's time to see the light. To democracy,
Now at 500 hertz that is.
justice and peace we must unite. To democracy.
It's not really changing the balance of the mix, you know.
Yeah.
You can put some stuff in there. And then, of course, you know, the trick is we're now doing this on the stereo mix. The trick, of course, is to go into the single sources, the single tracks, and, you know, warm up the vocals a bit. That will also bring them a bit up front, make the vocal sound a bit more intimate for us. So, but there's definitely space within 200 500 to warm up the mix a little bit. And we want to go into the single sources and do this. So that's it pretty much. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thanks guys for watching this. We do a lot more stuff. We do a podcast in English, in German, but that's not what I'm talking about today. This was Master Feedback Live.
Yeah.
And we hope to do 2 shows of this kind every week. Depends on you guys. Send us your tracks. We want to hear your tracks and then do a little discussion of your track in the show. We will give you some feedback for the mix and we will do a free master for your mix.
Wow, free master, that sounds good.
Isn't that exciting?
Very exciting.
So send your mix. I will put the email address in the comments, but it's masterfeedback@mixedbymarkmozart.com. Not exactly the shortest email address, but I will put it in the comment. But you can also just send me a PM on Facebook and yeah, any type of music, you know. This was the first time we listened to a reggae track on the show. Very exciting, but send us anything you do, you know. We listen to any type of music here, classic, even classical stuff, rock, hard rock, hip hop. Send it over and we'll have a listen. And let's do some more of this sweet reggae music. And that's it for today. Thank you.
My people is scraping the bottom of the barrel, doing the line to get their food today. It doesn't matter the way of the apparel. The revolution took our destiny away. My people is a victim with pain and domination. Under the violence that kills like the doomsday. What can be done to stop this growing situation? Oh please my Lord, give us just a way to democracy, because we need to see the light.